How you doing today, Ms. Sims?
I'm doing fine, sir.
Good. I was in your class on past Tuesday, and students were very engaged in what you were doing, and most of them seemed to understand that particular standard you were teaching. You were doing standard A2N, RN 4.2, rewrite expressions involving radical and rational exponents using the properties of exponents. Is that what you're all
Yes, sir.
working on? Okay. And I noticed that they seem to be following along with you and catching on what it is that you were trying to get them to see. As you think back about that, what actions that you were taking during that time did you think that led to their understanding? What was it, some of the things that you were doing that may have led to their understanding?
Well, my lesson demonstration, and also after I demonstrated, I gave them a problem to do, like check understanding. They had to do that to see as I monitored them. And first thing they had to do was think about the problem, and then they worked the problem out. They had to go to the board. Some people went to the board.
Yeah, I noticed that you had several students going to the board, and many were volunteering to go,
Yes.
so I didn't see, it seemed like they understood that. Based on your teaching though, what led you to that standard? I mean, why did you select that particular standard?
Well, the standard was really one that we really have to teach.
Okay.
So therefore, I had to go over that standard before I get to the more complex problems.
Okay. So you felt that was based on your previous data, that's something that you need to make sure you cover again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Let's look at the standard. It says rewrite expressions involving radical and rational exponents using the properties for exponents. Let's look at it based on what the students need to know and what they need to show. So in that standard, what do they need to know?
They need to know how to find the square roots.
Mm-hmm.
They also need to know what a radical is,
Okay,
and also what an exponent is, and what does it mean.
okay,
So therefore, they will be able to show how to rewrite expressions involving radicals, rewrite expressions involving rational problems. So, and they will know, they should know by the end all the properties of exponents.
okay. So that's what they would need to know. In order for you to know that they know, what would they need to show?
They have to show how, by demonstrating by the steps, what did they do first in order to get this answer? What did they do second in order to get to the answer, and so forth?
Okay, so what is in the show part, what is the key piece that I noticed you used the I'm calling it a bracket, but tell us, what is the key piece they have to look at? What is something that they have to show into that part?
If the problem was in the parentheses, they have to show why they removed the parentheses and put a square root symbol there. How did they get from one point to the other point for us writing their fractions? So that's what I would be looking for in order to grade that problem. Not necessarily is correct, but the correct steps is what I'm looking for, not the correct answer all the time.
Okay. I know in the standard it mentions something about exponent, rational exponent. What is some of the things they would have to show that they understood that particular part?
Well, for instance, we did a problem in class and it just had the square root of x to the third power. And they had to know that up under the, I could tell them up under the which is your radical, 2 is there because 2 is the square root. So that'll be 2 and a 3. And they had to know where to place them at on the problem.
Okay. I noticed, I did hear you use the term look under the arm, and I heard one student say, what arm? Is that something that you gave them, or that's part of the?
I gave that to them so
Okay.
that I felt like they can understand it better if I use some other terminology. Sometimes we have to deviate from that from the terminology and use something else so the students can understand.
Okay, so that was just your colloquial explanation where they would know that they look under that,
Yes.
determine whether or not. Now, what were they looking for when they look under?
They were looking for whatever the power is
Okay. Power of the what?
of the exponent.
Okay, okay. And then I do know you said something to them about if it's nothing there, then it becomes
A 1.
a 1.
Right.
Okay.
If there's nothing there, and you look at the problem, it just had square root of radical 3, and nothing up under that, as I said. Therefore, the 1 would be there because it's understood. Just like I told them also, if they just have x by itself, it's understood to be a 1 there. Most students get confused, that's a misconception there, because they said that x is equal to 1. X is not equal to 1, the coefficient is equal to 1.
I wasn't there when you went through the exemplar, because when I got there, you all were doing mostly, you were doing the, we do, that was working along with you.
Right.
And getting to through the exemplar, as you unpack the standard, is there anything you think you could have did differently with the exemplar that you went through to kind of move them along in the process?
Well, one thing was that the exemplar was kind of a little bit harder than the problems that we were doing in class.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I should have included more of those type of problems within it. But I had to go through it at the end to show them how to do that exemplar anyway. But maybe it would have just settled in their minds that I need to do this, I need to do that. But most of them got it anyway.
So when I came in, you were breaking it down, the exemplar down in a smaller piece.
Right.
And so their understanding, from your feel of their understanding of the exemplar, you felt that then you had to differentiate it down into a smaller piece.
Right.
And then you were able to get them back to the exemplar.
Right, because that class, I have maybe 50% that can catch on real fast, and then the other 50%, I had to break it down for them.
Okay.
So therefore, I'm working on that.
Okay. All right. What about in your tier slide process? Is that where you do that mostly in your?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't see that in there. Okay. So after you looked at the students' work, what were some of the gaps even after that? What were some of the gaps that came about even after you had broken it down and then they did the exemplar, maybe the ticket out of the door? What did you notice from that as related to the gap, from them understanding you had the exemplar, you broke it down to smaller pieces, then you brought them back to the exemplar?
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the gaps or misconceptions even after that?
Okay, as I said earlier, some of it was, well, for example, if I put a whole number in there in front of that X, and some of them did not know how to do the square root still, some of them didn't know how to do a third root, and so forth. So therefore, I'm going to revisit that, the bell word, and explain it to them, and maybe a practice work.
Okay, so you think it's not, do you think it's something you need to reteach, or you just think that more practice?
More practice.
More practice. So how are you going to weave that in?
I'm going to just give them a lesson before I start my new lesson, and practice that for about 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm going back into my new lesson.
Okay. Okay. So what I've heard you say is that you feel that most of your students were able to gain this. What percentage would you use? You see, even at the end, you were still with the 50, or did it move further? Or what do you think you were at the end?
About 70%.
70%. Okay, 70%. All right. Now I know we have a ANET assessment that's coming up very shortly, and so I'm sure that particular standard will be assessed in that assessment.
Yes, sir.
So let's look at that to see if we have a goal of 80% met based on that, so we can get a 10% gain based on the assessment after we give them the practices and things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else that you want to share about the process that I may have missed that you think would be valuable for you as you reflect, as we've gone through this process and you kind of reflect? Anything else that you would like to add that may be
sir.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Ms.
Thank
Sims. All right.